Welcome. Today we are starting the second day of the week, and today we again are having some network problems, but I think voice is okay now and we can move on. Yesterday we left off integration and selecting and prioritizing last slide. We were talking about that the selecting and prioritizing thing, though, is a responsibility of the project sponsor, but the things which he has to consider are more like the responsibilities of the portfolio manager, the senior management. So these are basically the decisions traveling down from the from portfolio and organization to the project executive or the project sponsor. Project sponsor, after project sponsor has decided and selected the project, then we will concentrate and focus only on the project, and we will not talk about the selection and prioritization anymore. Anyways, few words about prioritization which were left. Priorities can and do change throughout the year. We were talking about, we have got a number of ideas, project ideas with us, and uh, we have prioritized the projects according to that. And those projects, new ideas can also get in, and naturally we have to reprioritize the list according to that, and there could be changes to it. New projects come up and that weren't originally submitted during the call for the projects, and they must be added to the list. So reprioritization begins anew, and resource alignment and assignments are shuffled. So organizations usually have a process to recognize and screen the project requests, accept or reject these requests, and prioritize the project based on some criteria. And this criteria is established by the senior management or the portfolio management. But as I said, project sponsor is kind of connected with them, and he also has these kinds of decisions to take. So he may use this selecting and prioritizing techniques. Then a little about the selection methods, though it is not really much to be addressed here, but generally in selection and prioritization they use two types of techniques. One are the mathematical models and the other are the benefit measurement methods. These mathematical methods, also known as the calculation methods, these methods provide a way to calculate the value of the project, which is then used in project selection decision making. So it is more numerical in nature, more mathematical in nature, in which you can do 2 plus 2 and you can find out which project is better than the other and which should be given more priority. The benefit measurement method, which we'll talk more at a later stage, is also known as decision model, and these models examine different criteria used in making decisions regarding project selection. So if you can, judge it from another angle, the mathematical model is more quantitative in nature, whereas the benefit measurement model is more qualitative in nature because it looks at the various functions and qualities of the project for prioritization decision making. In mathematical, a specific set of steps to solve a particular problem. They use linear modeling, dynamic modeling, integers, nonlinear, and other multi-project programming in form of algorithms. These are complicated mathematical formulas, algorithms they are. They require, naturally, if you are an engineer, you would understand better, engineering, statistical, and mathematical background used by organizations considering undertaking projects of enormous complexity. Once we are dealing with chaos, when we are dealing with complexity, then we have to resort to these statistical or these mathematical methods. Mathematical models are also known as constraint optimized methods. Constraint optimized, meaning that it is the most optimized mechanism you have found out, and this is the best solution. You might have heard about a subject by the name of operations research. That is basically the logic or algorithm which is used for making these kind of constraint optimization methods. Then the benefit measurement method employs various forms of analysis and comparative approaches to make project decisions. It includes comparative approaches such as cost-benefit analysis, scoring models, benefit contribution methods, and it includes various cash flow techniques and economic models. There are many things, but we will be talking more about cost benefit analysis, and we will discuss each one of the method in cost benefit analysis at a later stage. So this is more qualitative in nature. Cash flow techniques, they include those cost benefit methods also. Like, we will discuss the payback period, we will discuss the net present value, internal rate of return, net, I mean, IRR, internal rate of return, and there is another, there's a fifth one, I'm just skipping my mind. But anyways, once we get to that, we will talk about those things. Now, this is integration. Integration has 6 processes, as you now understand. We have briefly discussed each one of those 6 processes. And now we are going to go into the detail of each one of them as far as their inputs, their tools and techniques and outputs are concerned. Naturally, some inputs are required for every process, some outputs are getting out of every process, and while we are processing that process, we need to have certain tools and techniques to use them. So this one slide, this shows all the 6 process groups of processes of integration, along with the detail of their inputs, tools and techniques and outputs. This is a summary of the remaining chapter, but we will discuss each one of these one by one. As we now understand what the project charter is, and the subsequent slides will further explain this thing to you, it formally recognizes the existence of the project. Meaning what? That before this charter was created, the project was not formally recognized. You may have been, doing the feasibility of our project, which as yet did not exist. Now it has been found feasible, it has been contracted to you, and now you are formally starting it up. So you have recognized this project as a project now. This document, charter, is the formal recognition of the existence of this project. Moreover, this also assigns the project manager and provides him the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. Key benefit is, when we have a charter, we have a well-defined project start, and project boundaries are defined. We know from where exactly the project is starting. This was a question which was asked to me by someone about project charter, and I recorded a video on that also. I wrote an article and I shared it on LinkedIn and Facebook, and if you can go through that, you will have in-depth knowledge of that thing, how and when the project should start and can start. But anyways, formally, charter is the thing which causes a project to be formally started. So by charter, we actually are, it's a creation of a formal record. It is a document which can be referred to, and sometimes we can say that this is the proof that this project exists. It is a direct way for senior management to formally accept and commit the project. So that also indicates that senior management is the authority who is actually initiating this project, or you can say accepting and committing to the project. So once a charter has been issued, then it means the senior management agrees to the start of the project, no matter who signs it. This is again an issue, who signs a project charter, and I discussed earlier also. Charter is created by the project sponsor. Project may be signed by the project sponsor, but naturally this is an authorization being given by him by the orders of the senior management or the project board sitting on top of him, and this project board may decide to sign it themselves, or they can delegate the signing authority to the project sponsor. So for all practical purposes, from the project manager's point of view, it is project sponsor who gives them the charter. So generally project sponsor signs it, but if senior management or project board wants to sign it, then all members of the board will sign at the end of the charter. Then the question is, do the project manager also sign this project charter? First of all, project manager does not sign the project charter because he is not the author of this document. He may have provided some help in phrasing the charter, but he is not the author of this document. Therefore, he cannot sign it as an author. But if at all he can sign it, he can sign it as a receiver of the document. That is the only possibility that project manager's sign could be on the charter. So a charter may be created with the help of the project manager, but it is not the responsibility of project manager because project manager cannot write order for himself. It is the project sponsor who is giving him that order. Now let's have a look at the inputs and outputs and the tools and techniques. Well, it may look complex because a lot many things are being input and there are more than one tools and then we are producing something. But if you have heard me closely earlier, then you would know that when the sponsor got into the project, he was carrying three documents. All those three documents are input to this process. You remember project statement of work, which was the customer's basic document or statement of the work, where when he decided he cannot do this job himself and he has to get it done from some outside source, so he wrote a statement of work. This is the statement of work we require. Then our organization developed a business case whether they should go for it or not. So that business case provides the justification why are we going for this project. So that business case is also required. And then the final contract or the agreement we have reached with our customer is also an important document for creating the charter. In addition to that, from our organization or enterprise, we get two inputs which usually are received by all the processes, almost all the processes, all the 47 processes, and these are enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. As I have been explaining to you, enterprise environmental factors are internal and external factors which can affect the project in any way. They may not be documents by themselves, but they could be factors like weather, environment, or whatever, or culture and things like that. And organizational process assets are essentially documents which are the policies, procedures, rules, regulations, and all these kinds of things. These are in the organizational process assets. So why do you require them in this process? Because to develop a charter, I may consider the culture of the organization, the external factors impacting the project. So those things have to be considered while I'm creating the charter. On the other hand, I need to have a procedure or a guideline how to create a charter that would be provided maybe in the organizational process assets. Some of the rules would be defining it. Then I may require a template for the project charter which organization may have standardized and is available in organizational process assets, or when the previous projects were created, their charters could serve as a guideline for me to create this charter. So you see, these are the 5 inputs and they are very simple inputs. We have already studied them, that 3 things are coming with the sponsor and these 2 items, enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, are coming from the organization side. Now, you have very simple tools here. You have to use your expert judgment. So whose expert judgment is it? First of all, this job is of project sponsor. Therefore, project sponsor is using his expert judgment, but it is not only his expert judgment. Whenever we use the word expert judgment, it also means that he may seek advice from any source. It may be a consultant, it may be a coach, it may be his own team members or his senior management or whomsoever he can get any new ideas about it. So this is the expert judgment he can be using. Moreover, he will also require to have some kind of facilitation techniques as if he can easily create the project charter. He has to facilitate the process of developing the charter. Maybe he need help from the project manager or someone else, then that facilitation has to be provided as if the charter can be developed. The output is only one thing, and that is the project charter itself. And as far as the project charter is concerned, well, PMI is not going to provide you any format for that. The formats of various documents is not the subject of PMI. PMI has just told you that you need a charter. It may give you further advice and guideline on how to create a charter, or it may tell you what are the items or things which you should be including in the charter, but PMI avoids giving any templates from themselves, because projects are different in different types of organizations and different types of industries. Therefore, every organization may have their own format which might be different, a little different from other organizations. Therefore, PMI is not suggesting you any standard template. Now, look at this diagram. It shows project charter as a dark gray box over a lighter gray background of integration management. So the knowledge area is integration management. The process under question here is develop project charter, which is shown in the dark gray box as 4.1, 4 meaning the chapter number 4 which we are studying right now, and this is number 1 means that this is the first process of chapter number 4. So 4.1 is develop project charter. Here we have got two entities interacting with it as an input. Project sponsor is entering the domain, and organization is providing some outputs. What is project sponsor bringing? He is bringing along the agreements, business case, and the project statement of work, whereas from the organization side we are getting organization process assets and enterprise environmental factors. If you count them, they are all 5 inputs, as you have seen in the previous table. Now it creates the charter. Now this charter which is created, where this charter will be required? Charter once produced from this process, where is it required to go? Within integration, the develop project management plan process is from the same family as the project charter itself. Though both are integration, therefore both of them are shown on the same background, but the process which is not really being discussed and it is just getting an output would be shown as a white box. Then there are other white boxes which are outside of the integration knowledge area. That means they may relate to any other knowledge area. For example, the first two processes, 5.1 and 5.2, rather three processes, 5.3, 5.1, 2 and 3, they all belong to scope. Plan scope management, which will create the scope management plan, will require charter to do that. Collect requirements, again the charter should be in front, because project does not have anything else to contribute. If you are creating the charter, then this charter is going to be the input for so many other processes as if they can move ahead. So charter is required only for these processes, and these processes will then create some other output which would be used by subsequent processes. Charter will not be required anywhere else. So it is required for developing the scope management plan, collecting the requirements and defining the scope. And in time management, when we are creating the schedule management plan, this is also a process which will require the charter. Cost management plan again will require the charter. Risk management plan will require the charter, and identify stakeholders will require the charter. So if we count it 1, 2, 3, scope, 4, 5, 6, 7, these are the other knowledge areas, and one is develop project management plan, 8. There are a total of 8 places where the charter is distributed. If you can see, scope, time and cost were our project objective. So 3 processes of scope are getting the charter, schedule is getting the charter, cost is getting the charter, and in addition to that, risk is getting the charter and stakeholder identification is getting the charter, and naturally develop project management plan is itself an integration process which will be used in execution. So it also gets a copy of the charter. The project charter establishes a partnership between the performing and the requesting organization. In case of external projects, a formal contract is typically preferred way to establish an agreement. So you do remember that we have an input by the name of agreement. So that means it was an external project and a formal contract was awarded to us. And that contract is the agreement. In this case, the project team becomes the seller, responding to conditions of an offer to buy from an outside entity. Project charter is still used to establish internal agreements within an organization to assure proper delivery under the contract. So, um, project charter still will be used for internal agreements, like, our organization is itself giving a project to us for the benefit of another department. So that would also be covered with an agreement. The approved project charter formally initiates the project. So this now explains to us that the project is initiated by the formal project charter. Project manager is responsible. He is identified and assigned as early as the project is found feasible, preferably while the project charter is being developed. So that is minimum at that time project manager should be there. But prior to that, anywhere, anytime you could have started using the project manager. But remember that this person you have been, taking help from for creating the project charter, maybe he has been working with you earlier, but remember he has not been the project manager by that time. You have assigned him the project manager when you wrote the charter, and then you gave this charter to this project manager. So I would say that you may get the project manager involved in some pre-project activities, but formally he comes into play when the charter has been issued to him. Project charter should be authorized by the sponsoring entity, as I said. Who is the sponsor? Naturally, if all the delegated authority of sponsorship is with the sponsor, then he would sign it. Otherwise, the project board or the senior management will sign it. The project charter provides the project manager with the authority to plan and execute the project. So now the ball is in the court of the project manager, and he has to do all the planning and execution of the project. It is recommended that project manager participate in the development of the project charter to obtain a foundational understanding of the project requirement. If he is involved in the creation of the charter, then he would be able to better understand it. But at the same time, I said he is not the author of the project charter. He may have provided some help in creation of the charter, but he does not write it or authors it by himself. This understanding will better allow for efficient resource allocation to the project activities. If project manager understands what this charter means and he had been involved with it earlier, then probably it will be better for him to efficiently plan for the project. Initiator, whom I call the project sponsor, projects are initiated by an entity external to the project, such as the sponsor himself, project or program or project management office, or any staff member of them. A portfolio governing body also could start initiate a project. Project initiator or sponsor should be at the level that is appropriate to procure funding and commit resources to the project. Business need, as we touched upon it, we said this is the feasibility of our organization, and that proves why should we go to this project. It provides the justification for that, and it makes the case for that. Projects are initiated due to internal business need or external influences. These needs or influences often trigger the creation of a need analysis, a feasibility study, a business case, or a description of the situation that the project will address. Chartering a project validates alignment of the project to the strategy and ongoing work of the organization. So whomsoever is chartering the project, whatever is written in the charter should be in alignment with the organizational strategy. Therefore, we can clearly say that it validates that alignment. It assures that when we wrote the charter, the project was aligned exactly with the organizational strategy. A project charter is not considered to be a contract. Project charter is not a contract. Project charter is a authorization because there is no consideration of money promised or exchange in its creation. The five inputs, I think we are all very clear about them and we don't even need to talk more about them. I have already explained to you that project statement of work was created by the customer and it described briefly the product, service or result to be delivered by the project. And for internal projects, project initiator or sponsor provides a statement of work based on the business need. So maybe there is no contract and still there is a business need within the organization, so a charter can be issued. For external projects, the statement of work can be received from the customer as part of the bidding document. Statement of work refers to the business need, the scope description and the strategic plan. It describes the product, service or result the project was undertaken to complete. When the project is internal, this document is usually written by either the project sponsor or the initiator of the project, whomsoever he might be. When the project is external to the organization, the buyer typically writes the statement of work. Then is the business case. Business case describes the necessary information from a business standpoint to determine whether or not the project is worth the required investment. If you are making some investment in getting this project, is it all right to go for it? So feasibility defines it. Typically, the business need and cost benefit analysis are contained in the business case to justify and establish boundaries for the project, and such case analysis is usually completed by a business analyst. So here we talk about the role of the business analyst. So business analyst might be required for this. Sponsor should agree to scope and limitations of the business case. The purpose of business case is to understand the business need of the project. Why are we carrying out this project? A justification. Determine whether the investment in the project is worthwhile. It proves that we should do this project. It is so useful that we should be going for it and we should be doing it. And therefore, business case makes a case for the project to start. Business case often describes the cost benefit analysis also as the project comes about and the business case is written as a result of one of the needs or demands. So what were the conditions? We have already studied about them which cause the business case to be created. As I discussed yesterday, it could be the market demand, the organizational need, customer request, etc. etc. We talked about these things yesterday. Agreement or the contract is a formal document based on which the project is to be done. Agreements are used to define initial intentions for a project. Agreements may take form of a contract or a MOU or a SLA or just an agreement or a letter of intent we call LOI or any other verbal agreements or emails or written agreement. Whatever kind of agreements or contracts could be there, they are part of it. Typically, a contract is used when a project is being performed for an external customer. As far as enterprise environmental factors are concerned, the things from enterprise environmental factors which may affect the forming or developing of the charter would include the government standards, relevant government standards, industry standards and or regulations. Then we need to understand the culture and structure of the organization and also the marketplace conditions. That would make our case for this thing to happen. Organization processes that can influence project charter process include organizational standard processes. These are the SOPs. So SOPs, whatever are the SOPs of the organization, they may cause some impact. Templates may help us develop the project charter, and historical information and lessons learned will be a good knowledge base. As far as the organizational process assets are concerned, we have a number of items there. We have processes and procedures, and we have corporate knowledge base. And if you remember, we talked about it. The processes and procedures are about policies, procedures, processes, procedures. Then we have a lot many other things which are input here. And the corporate knowledge base is the historical information, lessons learned, registers, logs, project files, and so many other things. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, fine. I'm sorry for all this, but we have to live with it. How much have you missed? Okay, I was on the tools and techniques. Are you on the same slide? Tools and techniques. Okay, can you hear me now? My God, we have to live with it, right? The tools and techniques. As I said before, there are two items here: the expert judgment and the facilitation techniques. And as I explained to you, the expert judgment is often used to assess the inputs used to develop the project charter. So you have to be very keen and methodological as to ensure that all the inputs are present and they are useful. So you use your expert judgment whether the quality of inputs is okay, or you need them more refined, or you are really in a position to create a charter out of it. If those inputs are not complete, or they are not fulfilling your purpose, then probably we have to ensure that we get the full information. uh, Expert judgment is applied to all technical and management details. Naturally, we can have some assistance from technical side or the management side, but all these views and comments must come as if the sponsor can properly decide. Such expertise is provided by any group or individual with specialized knowledge of training and is available for many sources, such as other units within the organization. You can have consultants advising you. Stakeholders could play a role in it, or maybe the customers and sponsors also. Professional and technical associates could help you out. Industry groups, subject matter experts, and sometimes even the PMO can be instrumental in helping you in developing your expert judgment. To rely on individuals or group of people who have training, specialized knowledge or skills in the area you are assessing. So you must take this expert judgment from these experts, as if your decision should be right. They might be stakeholders, consultants, and other experts. would be helpful in assessing the inputs of the process. Facilitation techniques have broad application within the project management processes and guide the development of project charter. So once you are sitting down, maybe with more than one people, and you must consider everything which must be included in the charter. You must not miss out anything. Although charter is not a very detailed document, but because it is a basic document, it is the root of all other documents which are to be created in project management. Therefore, you must be very calm and very composed when you're doing that. Don't hurry. So even if you have to do a little bit of brainstorming, and if there is a conflict of opinion amongst the people of the project board or whomsoever, then the conflict management has to be exercised. Problem solving is to be done. Meeting minutes are to be created. Meetings are to be managed properly. So through all these techniques, you will be able to create a charter. And who are you? You are the sponsor of the project. And who is going to give the permission for that? Who is going to, vet this charter? That would be the project board or the senior management. Output simply is the project charter, as we described earlier, is a document issued by the project initiator or sponsor that formalizes the existence of the project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources to project activities. This is just a repetition of the definition of project charter. It documents, as we talked before, business needs, assumptions, constraints, and the understanding of customers' needs and high-level requirements. Because at the level of charter, we cannot have detailed requirements available. So we will suffice with the available information. Whatever level of detail is available, a high-level detail is available, that is enough to create the charter. Purpose, as you understand, of this process is to create the charter, and initiating process group is to authorize the project or the phase of the project. It also gives the project manager the authority to apply the resources. These are also the purposes of the project charter, formally authorizing the project to begin and committing the resources. Project charter is a written acknowledgement for the project's existence. It's a document that names the project manager. Project manager is nominated in this document. And then it gives this project manager the authority to assign the resources. So as soon as you have issued the charter to the project manager, ball is out of the court of the project sponsor. Then it is project manager who has to process this thing any further. Project is officially authorized when the project charter is signed. Then is formalizing and publishing. Project charter is the official written acknowledgement and recognition that a project exists. We have repeated this thing many times, but why is it being repeated? Because we are cementing this thing into our minds that project charter is this document. This is an official recognition that yes, this project exists. This is a written proof. It ties the work of project with the ongoing operation of the organization. So this behaves like a linkage between the operation and the project start. It's usually signed by a senior manager or the project sponsor. It gives the project manager the authority to assign organizational resources to the project. Charter documents the business case or demand that the project was initiated to address. It includes a description of the product, service, or result. It is just, the description of the things which we have already studied. So I'm reading it out to you just for your benefit, and maybe some point sticks to your mind. It is usually the very first official document of the project once acceptance of the project has been granted. So this is the first document, and from here on we will be creating a lot many documents in this project. Project charters are often used as a means to introduce a project to the organization. Outlines the high-level project description, only the high level. Because at the time we are creating the charter, we do not have the low level information or the detailed information available. Therefore, it will just define broadly the project description, the business opportunity or need, and the project's purpose. Executive managers can get a first glance look at the benefits of the project through this project charter. Who are the various stakeholders involved here? The project manager, project sponsor, functional managers, and a project champion. Normally, project champion, we normally call sponsor as a project champion, but if there is some other person whom you have, um, you know, for just for the purposes of bringing a good name to your project, advocating your cause, and sending your message out. So this person would be the project champion, and this champion, if separate from sponsor, must be a senior person. What all should be included in the charter? We already said business case and all that must be included, but generally, if these are the some headings we must discuss. What is the purpose or the justification of the project? What are the project objectives that are measurable? In a very high level sense, not detailed. High level list of requirements, high level description of the project, high level list of risks, summary milestone schedule, summary budget, criteria for project approval, name of the project manager and their authority level. What is authority you are giving to this project manager? Name of the sponsor or the one who authorized this project, and what authority that person exercises. Who is the author of the project charter? I have explained earlier. In some organizations, project charter might write the project charter, but that does not mean that he is the project author. He will write only what the project sponsor wants him to write. It is not, he does not apply his own mind in writing of the charter. Since the project charter authorizes the project and authorizes you as the project manager, it doesn't make sense for you to write a document authorizing yourself to manage the project. This is exactly the point which I made earlier. Author of the charter should be an executive manager in your organization, external to the project, with the power and authority to assign resources to this project. This is usually the project sponsor or initiator. So that means the project sponsor or initiator is not part of the project team. He comes from the organization. So he is outside of the project team. So from exam purposes, the charter is authorized by someone external to the project. Project charter isn't complete until you have received a sign-off from the project sponsor, senior management, and key stakeholders. All these people must sign on the charter, or they should delegate their authority to the project manager, the sponsor. Sign-off indicates that the document has been read by those signing it, let's hope so, and that they agree with its content and are on board with the project. It also involves the major stakeholders right from the beginning and should win their continued participation in the project going forward. If someone has a problem with any of the elements in the charter, now is the time to raise the red flag. Once the charter has been approved, then it should not be challenged because it is the root document, and if you keep amending the root document so often, your project performance and plan all will be affected. How do you publish a charter? Maybe by holding a kickoff meeting with the key stakeholders to discuss the charter and then obtain their sign off, or signing the project charter document is the equivalent of agreeing to and endorsing the project. Anyone who is signing it, that means he agrees with it. Charter will occasionally be revised to reflect new details. Although this seldom happens, but I have seen certain situations where a charter was revised, because revising a charter means that you are uh, affecting all the planning after the project due to the result of the charter change. Publishing is distribution of a copy of the project charter to the stakeholders. Publication can be printed or electronic format, distributed via the company email system or on the company's intranet. Okay, then we move on to the project management plan. That is, process name is develop project management plan. So here, because we have the charter available with us, so charter will be a major input. Enterprise environmental factor and organization process assets will anyways be there. Then there is a thing written as outputs from other processes. That means all other processes which are actually creating parts of their own, like the schedule management plan, cost management plan, and all that. So all these management plans are put together in the project management plan. Again, we need the same expert judgment and the presentation techniques for creating the project management plan. Now, this may look like a very complex diagram to you, but if you ask me, I would say it is a very simple diagram. Why? You see, when we were, project management plan was the first document which was created. Before anything could be done in planning, what should it include? It should include those guidelines which are to be provided to other knowledge areas for doing their work and for developing any such like document. So project management plan is receiving output from everywhere, all of the processes, and it is receiving organizational processes and enterprise environmental factors, and where it says output from other processes, there is a long list of those processes. He could have made this many additional boxes, but it avoided just by saying that this is just a list of all those activities or processes which have to be done. Then the project management plan comes out of it. And do you remember I told you that after the project management plan has been created, it is to be distributed to all processes of monitoring and control and all processes of closing. And at the same time, we also understand that the customer has to agree with the project management plan. It has to be communicated to the customer also. So all the knowledge areas and all the process groups after planning would require this charter, project management plan, sorry. And project management plan is composed of all of these management plans and some of the baselines, cost, schedule, and scope. Okay, this is the process of defining, preparing, and coordinating all subsidiary plans and integrating them into a comprehensive project management plan. Now, the interesting part is project management plan was the first document within planning which we started creating as a first step. After that, it is receiving whatever has been produced by any of the other knowledge areas. It also receives all of that and it owns it and it consolidates it into a comprehensible project management plan. The key benefit is that this is a central document that defines the basis of all the project work. I have already given you the explanation about the project management plan and the plan, but generally speaking, it defines how the project is executed, monitored and controlled and closed. All the procedure would be included in the project management plan, how we are going to be monitoring, executing the project, monitoring and controlling the project and closing the project, and therefore all the processes of execution, monitoring and control and close will have project management plan delivered to them. Content varies based on the application area and complexity of the project. So the content of the project management plan could be for a very small project, it could be just a few pages. Whereas for a very complex project, it could be a multi-volume book. So it is developed through a series of integration processes where all the other knowledge areas, their planning processes have produced certain results, and all those results form part of the project management plan. And naturally, we could only guess how much we know. We cannot even guesstimate about certain things because those are unknown to us. They are unknown unknowns. So as we move ahead in the life of the project, this plan will keep revising, will be further elaborated, further information will be made available, and we will ensure that that information is inducted into the project management plan. And finally, this project management plan is the one based on which the monitoring and control processes finally uh, checks and analyzes the thing, and finally perform integrated change control process is the one which processes all the change requests. So size of the charter also varies depending upon the complexity of the project, the information known at the time of its creation. Whatever we know so far, we will base our charter according to that, and the understanding we had at this stage might change later, and then we have to amend the chart. So this was the input. These are the other outputs from other processes. This is the list of all those other processes, all the management plans, and all the baselines. And then I have also put it in the order in which these knowledge areas occur. Scope management plan and requirement management plan from scope baseline, and schedule right scope baseline, and the upper two documents, these are related to scope. Schedule management plan and schedule baseline, this belong to time. Cost management plan and cost baseline belong to cost, and then everything else has got single process except for quality. Quality management plan and process improvement plan are required. Enterprise environmental factors for project management plan could be any government or industry standards, PMBOK for vertical markets, and on focus areas like vertical market in construction, or focus areas like environmental, safety focal groups, risk, agile, etc. Project management information system, what is that? So this is an automated tool. This could be a computer program such as a scheduling software tool, a configuration management system, an information collection and distribution mechanism, or web interfaces to other online automated systems. So it could be any one of these. Organization culture and structure all matters for the management practices. Infrastructure, what is the existing facilities and what is the capital equipment with you. This is the as is scenario as you do in business process reengineering. Personnel administration, that is hiring and termination guidelines, employee performance guidelines, employee performance reviews, and employee development and training records. Standardized guidelines, work instructions, proposal evaluation criteria, and performance management criteria. Project management template includes generally all the guidelines and criteria for tailoring the organization's set of standard processes to satisfy business needs of the project. Project closure guidelines are requirements such as the project validation and acceptance criteria. Then is the change control procedures, steps by which the changes to following documents will be approved and validated. It may amend the organizational standard. It may update the policies, plans, or procedures and other project documents. Project files from previous projects like cost schedule, scope, schedule, cost, performance management baseline. project calendars, project schedule network diagram, and risk registers. These all are the various types of project files. In organizational process assets, we use the historical information and lessons learned from the lessons learned knowledge base. Configuration management knows knowledge base containing the version and baselines of all office. So it can have the organizational standards, policies, procedures, or any other documents. We have already talked about the expert judgment. I'll just skip that. Project management plan. Life cycle selected for each phase must be mentioned. Details of the tailoring decision by the project team, project management processes, which project management processes you have selected. Okay. I think my voice was lost for some time. Anyways, project management plan should define the life cycle of the project broadly. Naturally, in detail, we will have it in the scope management plan. So project management processes, there are 47 processes. Out of the 47 processes, which are the processes you have selected to be done in the project? Level
for the last, I guess, 2 minutes.
जी आवाज आ रही है? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. السلام علیکم جی میں جی سہیل اقبال بول رہا ہوں میرا اکاؤنٹ ہے SYSCOMPK جی جی یہ جی پچھلے 1 گھنٹے میں میری یہ چوتھی کال ہے اور میں ایک ویڈیو کانفرنس میں ہوں آفیشیل اور پہلے تو اسٹیبلش ہی نہیں ہو رہی تھی آدھا گھنٹہ لیٹ اسٹیبلش ہوئی ہے اور ابھی بھی جو کنیکشن بار بار بریک ہو رہا تھا وائس آڈیو بند ہو جاتی ہے آڈیو اور ویڈیو بند ہو جاتی ہے ابھی اس وقت پھر بند ہوئی ہے جی بالکل کی ہے، اس کے باوجود مجھے جی جی جناب. جی ہاں. نہیں جی، وہ گو ٹو ٹریننگ ہے ہمارے پاس. جی جناب، ابھی آواز آ رہی ہے؟ آئی ایم ویری سوری جی، مطلب تھنگز آر ناٹ گوئنگ ایز وی پلانڈ، اور آئی ایم ٹرائنگ ٹو فکس دا پرابلم، بٹ یو سی وٹ ڈو یو تھنک، شوڈ وی کنٹینیو؟ اچھا جی، میں I'll continue. Right. Okay, the next process is direct and manage project execution, and that execution has got only one process of integration, and that is this process, direct and manage project execution. If you remember it correctly, we have said that whatever is written in the project management plan, although we say project management plan was created with a lot of deliberation, whatever is written in the project management plan, that is exactly to be followed here. So project management plan is an input here, and what else is the input? Enterprise environmental factors are input, organizational process assets are input, and approved change requests are input. Can someone tell me from where are these approved change requests coming? You can write down, because I know your voice won't be. From where has approved change request come? GN3? You can write down. I can't hear you because your voice is completely broken. You know, changes are approved. Yes, exactly. Changes are approved in monitoring and control, and the process which is responsible for getting them approved is integrated, perform integrated change control. So once a change request is approved, a copy of that approved change request is sent back to execution into this process, direct and manage project execution and project work, that will actually take that approved change request as an input. Then we have the same tool of expert judgment with an addition of a new tool, which is project management information system, which I just have shown you the definition of. Project management information system is a automated tool which keeps track of all things happening, within execution and monitoring and control. As a result of the happenings of monitor and control project work, the deliverable will be created, and naturally this is untested and we have just produced it. It is the job of the monitoring and control to look at the deliverable, and the second output is the project work performance data. I'm sorry, it is written here work performance information, which is wrong, and I will like to correct that. This is data. I'll again share the screen with you as if you can see this. I hope you get the screen. Okay, so we were saying that the output of direct and managed project execution, one is deliverable, second is work performance data, and third is the change request. And what is this change request? These are those change requests which execution have felt that something is blocking the execution path, and those change requests probably require emergent action, and because monitoring and control is happening simultaneously while the direct and managed project execution is doing its job, so change requests are expected to get approved immediately without any further delay. So these are kind of emergent change requests. So deliverables will go to monitoring and control and would be inspected first by quality control and later by validate scope. Work performance data will go from here to all the controls, and they will analyze it and convert it into work performance information, and so on. Change request, naturally, it goes always to the integrated change control. Now let me explain one more thing. Here it is written project management plan update and project document update. Although I have explained it earlier in third chapter, where in the end of third chapter, once we talked about the project information, there we said whenever any change request is moved, That change request is only moved when there is a change in scope or time or cost baselines. If there is no change in scope, time or cost, can the things be still changed? Yes, they can be changed, but in that case, we don't need to move a change request. Maybe there is a small little change in human resource. You have to put one man from here to there. So you can always do that. It is within the domain of the project manager if he can assure that there is no effect on the scope baseline, schedule baseline, or the cost baseline. So if that be the case, then he can directly amend the project management plan and update it. And if any project document has to be updated, this can also be updated without any approved change request. Third case is if there is no change request at all, just some corrective action. Some person has been told to do something in a specific manner and that does not affect the scope, time and cost, that can also be updated in project management plan and the project documents. That was the reason this you are going to find very common now, because in most of the processes in execution and monitoring and control, you will find in output these two items, project management plan update and project document update. Remember, these are not always updated due to approved change request. They could be there without even approved change request, right? And I gave you two scenarios. One is a change which is not affecting scope, time and cost, so you can do this. Second is any corrective or preventive action that does not affect the scope, that can also be making amendments to the project management plan and the project documents. This is the chart of this process. The process was direct and managed project work. The inputs it was getting were organizational processes and enterprise environmental factors from the organization. It was getting the project management plan from the developed project management plan. It was okay, and then it was giving the change request to integrated change control, which in return is giving it back the change approved change request. The project management plan could be amended from here and updated into the developed project management plan. Then we have got the project documents. These are being updated into the project document archive. Then we have the deliverables. Deliverables, as I explained, will go to the quality control, inspected, verified, and then they will go to further on, which is not shown here. They will further on go to validate scope. And work performance data goes to 8 places. Look at it. Validate scope will get a copy of work performance data. Control scope will get a copy of it. Control schedule will get a copy of it. Control cost will get a copy of it. Control communications, control risk, control procurement, control stakeholder engagement. Almost all the controls get a copy of work performance data. They already have the project management plan with themselves. So they compare the project management plan with the work performance data from their respective, points of view. Scope would be looking at it from the scope point of view. Schedule will be, analyzing this data from a schedule point of view, and so on and so forth. And they all will generate two things. One is the work performance information, the other is any new change request. So any new change request would definitely go to the integrated change control, and all the work performance information from these created from these 8 areas, all the change requests would be created from here, would go to monitor and control project work process, which I called the chief analyst, which will convert all this into work performance report. So we will be repeating the same old story time and again, but that will actually be serving in cementing your concepts. And if you have any doubts, I would strongly recommend that you ask your question. Right. Then we have what are the activities within the direct and managed project work. This will include perform activities to accomplish the project objective. create the project deliverables, provide, train and manage the team members, because human resources being managed here, obtain, manage and use resource including materials. So everything happening in execution is actually under this integration. Direct and managed project work is in charge of everything happening. So whatever processes are happening there, this takes the credit of all those processes. Therefore, all those things are written here. Then what kind of approved changes? What do they really change? There could be three kinds of actions. One is a corrective action, that is an intentional activity that realigns the performance of the project work with the project management plan. So you make certain correction to the project management plan. Preventive action, you have realized that certain future event is likely to occur which would damage something. To fix that, you are taking some preventive measures. This is an intentional activity that ensures the future performance of the project would be aligned with the project management plan. And defect repair classically relates to the deliverables, because the deliverables are inspected at two places in monitoring and control. One was control quality and the other was validate scope. At both these places, the deliverable might get rejected and because of being defective. So the defects are being repaired. So these are the three kinds of approved change requests. Then we have meetings. Meetings are due to discuss and address pertinent topics of the project with directing and managing project work. Attendees at the meeting may include the project manager, team, the stakeholders involved are affected by the topic. Each attendee should have a defined role to ensure appropriate participation. Meetings tend to be one of three types. Either they are for the information exchange, they are brainstorming exercises, or they are decision-making exercises. So these meetings should not be mixed as a best practice. If you intend doing brainstorming, then don't use it for information exchange. So design your meetings in such a way that they serve a specific purpose. Or even if you have to do more than one activities in a meeting, you can segregate the time for that. You say 20 minutes for information exchange, 20 minutes for brainstorming, 20 minutes for decision making. So that is how you can conduct an effective meeting. Work performance data is coming out of it. This is the raw data which is not yet processed or analyzed. So this will go to all 8 places which I just mentioned. Change request, as we have already talked about, these are the corrective action, preventive action and defect repair, and as a result the changes are updated into the project management plan and the project documents. Then we move on to the monitoring and control process group. Here we have got two processes. The first one is the monitor and control project work, and this is the chief analyst. Here we, as always, we will definitely have a project management plan here. The schedule and cost controls in monitoring and control have done thorough analysis and created some forecasting for the schedule and cost. These forecasts are very much required by this. Then there are certain validated changes. What are these validated changes which are getting into the monitoring and control? I would have to relate it with the approved change request, and that is going to be in the next step. When in integrated change control, next step, we'll discuss that there. When in integrated change control, a change request has been approved, a copy of that is sent to execution, the other copy is sent to quality control. Quality control verifies and validates that change. And once that change has been validated, that comes back to this process, that is the monitor and control project work, which will further analyze it and put it in order. Work performance information from all the 8 places we just mentioned would be coming here, and it will serve through its analytical techniques to consolidate that into the work performance report. And you are all aware about the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. This is a static scene everywhere. Everywhere they are going to be input. And in some places in future, you will see that they will also be appearing as an update in output, but not here. The tools we have for this are expert judgment, analytical techniques. Naturally, you have to analyze the data. You are the chief analyst, so you need to have the analytical techniques. Project management information system is required here, and meetings tool is also there. As a result, you may come up with a change request, but remember, all other controls are also authorized to move their change request. Execution is also sending out some change requests. So this is also one of the processes which can move the change request. Then we understand the work performance information is now being converted into work performance report. Project management plan and project documents have been updated. Okay. Okay. You understand what a scheduled forecast is, but I'll give you just give you the definition. Scheduled forecasts are derived from the progress reports against the scheduled baseline. So whatever is the distance, we do some analysis and do certain kind of calculation due to which we find out what would be our new estimate to complete the project in terms of duration. This is typically expressed in terms of schedule variance and schedule performance index, which we will be studying in earned value, and I have placed the earned value to be studied in cost management chapter. So let's wait for that to understand how these calculations are done. Similarly, the cost forecast is also that has got the cost variance and the cost performance index, and there are certain terms like estimate to complete, how much money is required to complete the project, how much money will be spent now is called estimate at completion, and what was the budgeted amount which at completion which was expected to be spent. So this all is called the forecast. This is the cost forecast, that was the schedule forecast. Then validated changes, work performance information. Right. Look at the list of the analytical techniques which can use. In statistics, we use regression analysis, grouping methods, causal analysis, root cause analysis, forecasting methods like series, scenario building, and simulation. You have to be having a lot of knowledge about statistics for doing all these things. Failure mode and effect analysis, fault tree analysis, reserve analysis, trend analysis, earned value management, and variance analysis. I will talk about most of these analyses in my subsequent lectures, but some of them may not be discussed. Work performance report, as you understand, the work performance information are consolidated into the work performance report. Once this job is done, then we move on to the integrated change control process, and that is the process which actually is responsible for receiving all the change requests and getting them processed. So what are the inputs? Naturally, project management plan will be the input. Project work performance reports, which were created by whom? They were created by the previous process of monitor and control project work. So work performance reports, a copy of that is being received by this process, perform integrated change control. And it is receiving change requests from everywhere. Input change request is the input only at this process. So it is receiving the change request from all the 8 controls and the monitor and control project work and from several processes in execution. And enterprise environmental factor and organization process assets are anyways our outputs, inputs, sorry. So here for making the integrated change control decisions, we use the expert judgment. We conduct the meeting. Maybe it is the project board which is meeting here to make that decision. Change control tools are used here, and ultimately the result is an approved change request. Only those change requests which are approved, they will get out of it, and they will be sent back to execution, and a copy will be sent to the quality control. Change log will be maintained, and project management plan and documents will be updated. There is a difference between a change request log and a change log. A change request log will also be kept, and that will contain each and every change request which had been used, which have been moved. There must be a record of that, and what disposal was reached in case of each of the change requests. That is called change request log. So for every change request, it will get the status of being approved or rejected or pended or whatever. So who decided that, what was decided, how it was decided, at what level it was decided, that all is included in the change request log. But those changes which get approved then form part of the change log. It is not the change request log. It is a change log. And change log will keep a track of that change happening on ground. That will ensure that all the approved change requests have been actually implemented on ground. Then we have a little about the configuration management activities. Well, I did talk about a bit about the configuration, that every knowledge area is basically responsible for keeping a track or record of all the documents it is creating. So this is called configuration, keeping a track or version control of all of their documents and items and things and products. Everything has to be properly recorded. This is called configuration management. Although each knowledge area will have it included in the management plan, but if you feel right, you can create a separate configuration management plan which will consolidate all the configurations of the project. So it is composed of 3 steps, and that is configuration identification, configuration status accounting, and configuration verification and audit. So this information given on this slide is good for understanding what configuration management really means, but PMI has a separate standard which is called practice standard for configuration management. And if you want to learn more about configuration, probably you must go through that standard. That is not a very big standard, just few pages, not more than 40-50 pages, and you can understand what the configuration management really is. Approved change requests are processed according to the change control system by the project manager, change control board, or by an assigned team member. Approved change requests will be implemented through the direct and managed project work process. The disposition of all change requests, approved or not, will be updated in the change log. Close project or phase. This is the last process of integration. Here you have to do the final audit of whatever job which has been done and whatever deliverables have been created. You have to check through a paper audit. Everything is properly documented, that is done according to the project management plan. Therefore, project management plan is an input. All the accepted deliverables from monitoring and control are coming here, and organizational process assets, how previous projects had been closing their projects. I need to know that, and because I need to follow that. Tools and techniques, naturally the expert judgment, the analytical techniques, same analytical techniques we talked about earlier, and the meetings with your project team. Finally, when everything is found okay, then the final product is handed over to the customer, and organizational process assets are updated. All the documents created from this project are handed over to organizational process assets for further record. And by this the project will end and there will be nothing outstanding. You can see Develop project plan is providing it the project management plan, which is not being updated from here because change request is no more. There is no more any change request. So project management plan cannot be updated at this scale. This can only be handed over to organizational process assets. Accepted deliverables which we receive after doing our paper audit, we are going to hand it over to the customer and in shape of the final product, service or result. So this is how we come to the end of this chapter, integration. I know it was very difficult covering it with this kind of internet. I was expecting this to complete yesterday, but just because of the disruptions, we had to extend it for 2 days. But anyways, we'll look at it in future. We can, if we can speed up, but we have very major areas in front of us: scope, time, and cost. As soon as we are done with that, and they will take a bit of time, the remaining processes will be much easier and faster. So, any comments? Any questions?
I guess it's good, sir. I don't know if you can hear me, but
Yeah,
it's fine.
I can hear you. Thank you very much. I think we should call it a day.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen.
Okay, sir. Good night.
See you tomorrow. Bye.